Welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I'll be covering every studio song the band has recorded and every bonus track that I can find. Each week we'll go over a new song from the beginning to where they are currently, and as they keep adding albums, I'll keep adding shows. Let the deep dive party begin.
In the magic garden, some were singing, some were dancing.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I am your host, Scott Haskin, bringing you this fan-based, band-endorsed show, and we are going through every song the band has recorded in the studio that I can get a hold of, from the beginning of Very Humble all the way through Livin' the Dream and the next album and the next one and whatever they record after that. Just picked up some additional bonus tracks. I'm waiting for them to arrive. Very exciting to find some additional little treasures to share with you guys down the road. But right now we've finished up the Magician's Birthday album, and we are now on to Sweet Freedom. This album is very special to me. We moved from Michigan to Colorado right before I turned 16. And so, you know, it's kind of a crazy time in someone's life, still trying to figure out who you are. And that last summer that we spent in Michigan was very special. And this album was a big part of that for me. Even just looking at the cover, the reds and the oranges on it really remind me of summer winding down, ready to give way to fall, the shadows getting a little bit longer on the ground. And there's just a certain warmth to the cover. The other interesting thing about the cover is just how vastly different it is from the last two albums that Roger Dean had done. You're looking at Demons and Wizards and Magician's Birthday, which are, animated, real mythical adventure type stuff. And here we just have a picture of sort of a background of a sunset with the band standing in the middle. Very typical album cover, but certainly different from the last couple that we had seen. So I'm not sure what was involved in that changeover, but that's the cover we have. And I think it's really beautiful. I always love those colors. I love sunsets. I love sunsets more than sunrises because I don't know, they feel like they're stretching out the day into the rest of the possibilities. And it feels like, it's just part of that transition. Whereas the sunrise is like, oh God, I got a lot to do today and I better get on it. I don't know. Maybe I'm weird, but that's how I've always seen things. But anyway, this album is very, very special to me. Every song on it, and I'm excited to get into it. But I do have to say that one thing I've talked about on the show is that, especially back in these days, every album had a certain bit of character to it that set it apart from other albums. For example, you couldn't take a song off of Very Humble and stick it on Sweet Freedom and me not to know that it sounds different, that it has a different tonal quality, that it was recorded differently. It's just going to sound different. And one of the things that makes an album cohesive is the fact that all the songs have that same sort of sheen to them, whatever that is, whatever the atmosphere and recorded sound in the studio was. And one of my favorite mixes and just overall, sounds of an album is Sweet Freedom. There's something about the fact that it's not crystal clear. It's got just a little bit of I don't know what the word is. It's like you've taken all the high end and just buffered it down a little bit so that it's not real crisp and sparkly. It just has a nice warmth to it. I think the whole album sounds great that way. I always get nervous when bands or engineers, I should say, because the band usually isn't involved anyway. But when things get remastered or remixed and remastered, because a lot of times they take away the personality that the album had. And if you were to go to, let's say Salisbury to Look at Yourself, Salisbury had a little bit of a sheen to it. Look at Yourself is a little more clear. Demons and Wizards was somewhere in between. Magician's Birthday had its own tonality to it. And Sweet Freedom certainly does too. I think a little more of the high end was taken off of this. And it just sits so lovely the way that it is. And that is a character that makes it just as much as any instrument does. Without that, if everything just sounded, like it was recorded the same way, like most albums do today, you really lose that personality. And I've said it many times on this show and my other show, I really miss that. Certainly, even though I write a lot of electronic-based music, not dance stuff, but just, ambient, atmospheric type stuff for my Mental Sauna series, I really try and make each album have its own personality. I EQ it a little bit different, but the sound of Sweet Freedom is definitely up there with one of my all-time top mixed albums. Another one would be Operation Mindcrime by Queensryche. I think that album is just so beautifully mixed, and there's so much going on in it. It had to be challenging to mix a band like Heep when you think about it, just because there's so many layers, so many things happening, a lot of little fillers, but a lot of stuff that needs to stand out. And that's a lot of work for an engineer today. That's a lot of fader programming and effects programming. But back then, it was all manual, and you had to mix down to a smaller version, and then you could, blend in a couple of things. Bouncing tracks was very common, but there's just something about this sound and this album that I love. And of course, the music is fantastic. We can't get around that. We've got the same lineup that we had. We have David Byron as the lead vocalist. We have Ken Hensley on keys, guitars, and vocals. We've got Lee Kerslake on drums, percussion, and vocals. We have Gary Thain on bass. I don't know if he does any vocals or not, but we do have Mick Box on guitar, who also does vocals as well. And then, of course, there's all that cross-pollinizing or pollinizing? I don't know. Crossbreeding of performances where, Ken Hensley will come out and play guitar. He might be singing a few lead lines here and there. It just gets a little bit hard to know who's doing what. But at the end of the day, the band together makes the sound, and everything that comes out in the final song is the responsibility of the band to create that, as well as their producer, Jerry Braun. But a great album. And it really starts off with a really good kicker. And we're just going to go ahead and get into that right now. Let's listen to Dreamer. This was, according to the official Uriah Heep website, this was written by Gary Thain and Mick Box. And Sweet Freedom, of course, came out in 1973. So, at this point, the 70s, man, this was such a crazy time in music. You had so many bands that were just killing it out there. I mean, you had Deep Purple, you had Emerson, Lake and Palmer, you had Black Sabbath, you had, I think Zeppelin was still around by 1973. Just so many great bands, and a lot of up and coming bands at the time that were learning from bands like Uriah Heep and Purple and Sabbath, and starting their own thing. And this was just such an amazing time in music. And it won't be long before, punk comes in, and then disco has its short-lived heyday. Then we start heading towards that 80s synth pop kind of stuff. But just some great stuff. I also want to tell you guys, before we start the song, I had the pleasure of having Paul Newton back on my other show, the Haskin Cast podcast. And we actually did a walkthrough of his album, the Newton Rainbow Project, which was he and Chris Rainbow put out an album called License to Rock. I absolutely love this album. We talked about it a little bit when I had him on the show last fall, but now we actually do like a little bit of a song-by-song walkthrough, and he talks about the finer and more interesting points of the song, how the project came together, all of that. It's a great time. So that will be out on Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific. So check that out. You can go to the same website, scotthaskin.com, and instead of clicking the Uriah Heep podcast link, click the other podcast link, and that will take you to my other show. And of course, I'll also put that in the on the main page of the Uriah Heep show. I've got a link for interviews that I've done with people who have been in Uriah Heep. So I'll add that as well. It was a good time. And Paul's such a great guy to talk to. And as I've gotten to know him since that first interview, that was actually, I met him 5 minutes before we started recording. He and I have really created a good friendship. He's such a great guy, an amazing bass player and musician, a good songwriter, everything you could want in a person. So it was great to have him on the show. So I encourage you guys to go check that out. But that's enough of that. We're here to talk about Dreamer. Let's check it out. What a kick-ass intro. It's absolutely perfect for this album. It really sets the tone. Really nice to hear Lee's bass drum really pushing through on this mix. That's something that I think was a little bit lacking in some of the other mixes. Overall, I've said that the mixes are great, but that is one thing that I could point out could have been brought up a little bit. But the drums sound great, and they're off to a great start. And then some just killer guitar playing here in the opening. Lots of stuff going on. And that's what I mean about the mixing is I'm hearing at least 3 different layers of guitar right there. And, to make everything cut through and be heard while blended together so that nothing is too much louder and drowning out anything else. That's a tough job when you have this many tracks going on that have that similar tonal quality, similar distortions and all that. I can hear a little bit of wah pedal in there as well. Just a great way to start off the song. And you can already tell David's just dying to jump in and start singing.
Making it all mine. Give me a chance to follow the bands, waiting for the sunshine, yeah.
Are you guys catching all this? There's so much going on. There's some great guitars in here, and they sound really good too. A great little solo bit there to fill in before the next verse starts. Really powerful vocal delivering, bass is just rocking it. Drums are solid. Just a great bit, and then you got the Hammond over the top of it. I mean, I could not ask for anything better to start off an album than this right here. They are just saturating every free space with some kind of amazing sound. Lots of great fillers on the guitar in between the vocal lines. Just really powerful, and of course the Hammond is really keeping things thickened up in the sound department. Hammonds are really good for that because they can be dialed back, but they can really fill up space too very easily without being too overpowering. I think it's a really nice balance here between guitar and keyboard, and then also between the bass and the drums. It just sits perfectly for my ears. Okay, in all fairness, do I even need to mention what a great solo that was? Well, I'm going to, because that was a great solo. Just really powerful, really just kind of makes me want to grab onto the song as if it were a physical object and just, bring it closer to my chest. Such a powerful performance. And how can you just not love that? And I really thought, you would think, as I did, I think the first time I heard it, that, the song was about to go in a completely different direction where they gave you that sort of false stop there. But nope, it didn't. It didn't go into one of those, a harmonized vocal things like they do from time to time. Just keep tearing through this like a freight train. I do want to mention that the rhythm of the vocals is just fantastic through this. You think about guitar riffs, keyboard riffs, bass playing, that kind of thing. But vocals have their own sort of rhythm and pitching to them. And I really love the word placement in both the verse and the chorus. I think it's fantastic. It's very exciting the way it's being sung. And that tends to happen a little more on upper tempo songs, but he's just got so many things to say, and he has to say some of them very quickly, but you can still hear each thing very clearly. And it's just kind of a fun rhythm that he's singing to. I really like that. And of course, the riff in this part right here that we're going into, I really love that, the way especially just, dips down into that low frequency there for a minute. Really cool. I think one of their best, actually. I don't know if that's a bass effect or if there's a keyboard playing along with the bass to really drop down those notes there. But that combination is, whatever it is absolutely fantastic. I love the sound of that, especially in that the riff in the first part of that clip there. Really, really inventive. Just an explosion of energy for this one. And it's one of those things that if you kind of blink and take your eyes off the song for even a second, you'll get lost pretty quick. Like, this is one that you really just have to sit down and listen to and pay attention to, because it just goes so fast that you'll get thrown off track pretty quick. I love this second solo section here on the guitar. Sounds great. And if you notice, and again, it all depends on how you're listening. If you're listening in the car, you may not detect it as much. If you're listening through earbuds or a good quality headphone, you may hear it better. But there's the main solo stuff is going on in the right ear, and then you've got another guitar that's playing some nice accents in the left ear, and they're beautifully balanced. I mean, I could not have balanced the two any better than that. And then not having the keyboard come in and overshadow any of that is really nice too. It's just such a perfect blend. Absolutely perfect. Now, of course, I was nowhere near the studio when this was born. I think I was a total of 1 year old, depending on the month of the actual recording. But I can picture David Byron in the vocal booth and everyone else outside just, giving him the thumbs up and then pointing their finger to tell him to sing higher and higher and higher and higher at the end, and just laughing. I don't know why I picture that, but I do. But this is kind of where, the last couple of cover tunes that we the last couple of unreleased tracks that we listened to at the end of our season on The Magician's Birthday, that's kind of where I thought those songs might be heading, into a vocal of this style where he sings and then he just gets higher and a little bit higher and adding more and more drama to it. I think there's a little bit of reverb growing as he gets higher in register as well. But I think that might have been where those songs were going, or could have gone in typical Heep fashion. But I really like that, and I like the way that he just put those little accents as he hit that middle pitch, because he wasn't just saying dreamer; he was just kind of putting a little spin on it, and I thought that was a nice choice. Added a little bit of color to it, and then when he went a little higher, then he went back to singing it straight again. But just so many great things going on in this song, so much energy. And it just sets the album off like a firework on the 4th of July, saying, "Hey guys, the show's starting." And I really like it. I really like that this was the opening track. They could have put this anywhere on the album, but it belonged at the beginning, I think. Yeah, we're going to bring it down heavily when we get to the next song, because the next song is "Stealin'," which we'll cover on Thursday. But that being said, I think that this is just a killer track to start an album with. So, if I was rating songs, which, I don't do, but if I were to, this would be, 5 stars. And I could say 5 stars because there's a song called 7 stars on the album. But it would be 5 stars all the way. There's nothing about this song that I would change or want differently in any way, shape, or form. It's an absolutely perfect track for me. So I think we're off to a good start for season 6 here, and for welcoming Sweet Freedom onto the show. Thank you guys for joining me. We'll be back on Thursday with, like I said, with Tll. And in the meantime, take care, stay warm. Check out my interview with Paul Newton tomorrow on the Haskincast podcast, where we will talk about the Newton Rainbow Project and the album License to Rock. In the meantime, cheers. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. If you have enjoyed this show, please consider going over to Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast outlet, leaving a rating or a review. Be sure to subscribe to make sure that you are notified when new episodes are available. Please be sure to share this podcast with your fellow Uriah Heep enthusiasts and anyone who you think would like Uriah Heep, which should be everyone. And if you are so inclined, please feel free to contribute to the Patreon account. And if you are not a Patreon subscriber, you can also pay through the PayPal link on the website listed in the show links below. I would also like to thank Uriah Heep for their very generous support of the show. And thank you guys for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Happy days!